Hey ADHDers and allies, it's ADHD Girl here, bringing you another episode of the ADHD and Me podcast. This month, we're talking about something that most ADHDers struggle with, and that's how to maintain healthy relationships. That's right, whether we're stressing out our partners, trying to love on our ADHD children, or even trying to make friends, things just don't seem to go to plan. To find out why that is and what we can do about it, I spoke to ADHD coach Shane Thrapp, who is an expert on ADHD life and relationships, who is fully immersed in the ADHD community. Now, for this podcast discussion, we're going to do things slightly differently, because once I got talking to Shane, it was clear he had so many interesting things to say about how ADHD and neurodiversity affects relationships. And when it came to editing, I just didn't have the heart to get rid of the information I know that so many of you will find valuable. So I've broken the discussion down into 3 episodes. The first one you're listening to today will focus on why it is as ADHDers struggle to form relationships in general. Then in episode 2, we'll be talking about maintaining healthy relationships around friendships. And finally, in episode 3, we'll be looking at romance and parenting a child with ADHD. Episode 2 is coming next week, with episode 3 coming the week after. Yes, it's all work here on my end, but that's the way us high-functioning ADHDers like it. And I'm committed to bringing you the very best information on ADHD so you're fully informed. Without further ado, let's kick off today's episode and find out why we struggle so much when it comes to relationships. So joining me on the podcast, I have Shane, who is a very interesting individual because not only is he an ADHD coach, he also started up his own company focused on spreading awareness of ADHD. And he's also on the board for help me out, Shane, is it like a Dueling Minds, is it?
Dueling Minds, which is an ADHD, which is an ADHD autistic dual diagnosis. And I'm also on the board of directors for the Men's ADHD Support Group, which is
that's so interesting.
Men's specific.
You got it from all sides. You've got your ADHD brain in a lot of areas. So how did you get to what you're doing now?
Through years and years of trauma and horrifying bad things growing up in the South of the United States. No, I joke about that. I actually had a really fun childhood. It was really different though.
Okay.
I never got diagnosed with ADHD or autism as a child. I did know I was different, and my parents were, and uncles and aunts and cousins were very blatant about, hey, you're just the weird kid. And social stuff really was confusing for me because people would say something and it wasn't the literal. I would either take it too literally and they were just being that generalized thing that people do. And it was just really hard for me, socially speaking. And when it came to doing that, though, I remember being 12 and we had just gotten a computer and I was watching Oprah, and there was a guy on there who was talking about body language for the FBI. And I remember just going, oh, there's a quantifiable thing. I can learn body language and maybe that'll make it less awkward for me. Unfortunately, children and teens do not have the same body language as people who have adults, and that was what they were talking about. So there was a little bit hit or miss, but I did become more aware.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it helped me be more aware of how to also express emotions in the proper way and when to express emotions. And so I was able to mask a lot of things very early on.
Wow.
But it wasn't until I was 30 when my oldest son was diagnosed with ADHD that I really started getting into trying to figure out what was going on.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
And I had gone through being homeless, drug addiction, a failed marriage with an abusive ex-wife. My life had imploded multiple times. I had failed out of college. I had gotten super sick and go to college, went through just a lot of life stuff happened.
Yeah.
And I was actually in a much better place at this point with my now wife, who's a special needs teacher. And I remember just, okay, I'm going to be there for my son. I'm going to be the support that he needed me to be. And as I'm reading about ADHD, and I'm going, and I'm just I'm keep reading all these hyperactivity or the inattentiveness and the distracted and the bouncing from job to job and the bouncing from relationship to relationship. And I was like, oh, all of those things are me.
Yeah, you're ticking all the boxes.
Right. I'm just ticking box. And then I, remember talking to my wife about it, and she was just like very blasé about it. She was like, I knew you had ADHD. I was like, why didn't you say anything? And she was like, well, because I thought you were just being a dude about it. That's stoic, strong.
Yeah,
we're not supposed to admit weakness.
Yeah.
And that kind of began the journey. That was where I started really getting into it. And I was working as a project manager for years, and it's where the basis for creating order from chaos came from. My brain works in a very particular way. I have a particular set of skills where I love walking into new things and just diving into the chaos of things. And I have the capabilities to learn very quickly when put into those environments of chaos. And the other side of my brain loves structure and putting things in its right place. Everything has its place. Let's make sure we have labels. Let's make sure that we have things where they go. Let's make sure we're talking to the people who are supposed to do these processes. Let's build the processes. So it's always been a natural inclination for me to be able to walk into those places and do that kind of work. So I was still doing a lot of that work at that point. But all right, what does this mean to have ADHD? Right. I did not know about autism at this point, by the way. I simply was like, okay, I'm just a little bit weird even for ADHD.
Right.
And then a few years later, after some really hardcore issues with getting diagnosed, because I was misdiagnosed multiple times because people didn't believe that adults could have ADHD at the time.
Yeah.
And it was really a big struggle because they put me on medications like SSRIs, which for some people with ADHD can cause some pretty significant issues, especially suicidal ideation, which was a problem I had. It was really a big struggle. And then eventually I found a doctor who was really working with me, got diagnosed, got on medications, but the medications didn't quite seem to work right. And as I was going through that process and I was getting super frustrated, my therapist sat down and let's do something real quick. Let's explore something. Just keep an open mind. And I remember she started asking me a bunch of questions from this sheet she had. And about halfway through, she was, hey, can you just relax? Look, she was like, you're in a safe place here. Just relax. Just do what you would naturally do if you were just super comfortable. And so I just took the mask off and I stopped looking her in the eye and I let my hands fidget and I let myself relax and I focused the way that I focus, which means not looking people in the eye. And my hand movements would let the tics happen, right? I have hand tics, real bad hand tics sometimes, especially the worse my social anxiety would get.
Yeah.
And then as we're going through it and she's asking me these questions and I'm answering them as honestly as I possibly can, we get finished and she goes, I actually think you have autism as well.
Wow.
And that is when I figured out that it wasn't social anxiety that I had, it was autism.
Right.
And that's why my hand will do these weird tics and things whenever I get really anxious, because I'm starting to get overwhelmed and my body's making a physical manifestation of it. And there was just a lot of other things, the social issues, the having to make a logical understanding of behavior and body language and use that to gauge accurate social masking. And then once I got through that whole process, I was recovering from getting really sick in 2018. Once I started getting better, I said, okay, I need to make change. I need to make a difference. There is a huge need for information about these issues, and I am a person who can do those kinds of things. And that's where creating order from chaos came from. I started getting involved in the ADHD community. I started really getting involved with a large number of different organizations like the Men's ADHD Support Group, CHAD, ADA, ACO, all organizations that have to do with ADHD. And my business was doing really good. And I started focusing on life and relationships and careers. And then once I started going through and I started working with Michael Ruffin of Dueling Minds, there was this like shift in my mindset where I recognize where I do love ADHD coaching and I love working with people who with their life issues and stuff like that. But my passion and my background is project and business management. And so now my business has shifted into a role where I work with creatives and solopreneurs or entrepreneurs or small business owners who have ADHD or ADHD. And I help them understand how to run a business that has a neurodivergent mindset. That's not based in the neurotypical ways of doing business that we often hear so many gurus talking about. Those things don't always work the best for us. But what I can do now is I can work to make the world better for my kids. I can work to make things better for my wife. I can work and make things better for my friends and family, and also make a change in other people's lives by helping them find that passion and keep that passion without getting overwhelmed with all the minutia and BS that they have to deal with.
Yeah. And that brings us full circle to what we're talking about today, which is relationships, which I know a lot of neurodivergent people really struggle with, the different aspects of relationships, mainly because of the social aspects, but there are other dynamics as well, which we're going to go into. But I'm so excited to hear your perspective on some of them. So I thought we'd start off by just talking about, in general, why do you think it is that neurodivergent people or people with ADHD and autism or any kind of a number of things, why is it you think we struggle in general with relationships? What is the common denominator here?
I think the common denominator in a number of these different things is emotional dysregulation.
Yeah.
We are starting to see a big push, especially in Europe, with an understanding that emotional dysregulation is a core facet of ADHD, autism, and other neurodivergence, especially like PTSD and things like that. And what we are starting to recognize is there needs to be a shift in the conversation when we're talking about the different symptoms of ADHD and the severity, right? We have the three different presentations, hyperactivity, inattentiveness, and combined. But what the core facet is starting to come to terms is how significant emotional dysregulation throughout all of it. And that is a huge problem for people with ADHD, including especially when you include things like impulsivity and our issues with communication.
Yeah.
Many of us weren't taught to communicate in a way that made sense for our brains. And when we did communicate, the super fast, hyperactive talking about every single thing that we were super excited about, and I just want you to know everything I'm going through right now, we were told to shut up.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so, the people around us were not able to parse out that we were trying to communicate in the best way that we knew how. And there was nobody who was willing to teach many of us how to communicate effectively. And that leads to a lot of frustration, a lot of misunderstandings. We already don't understand neurotypical people because they're different from us, and we don't learn that we're different. We learn that we're broken neurotypicals. That's what we keep being told, is that we're broken. We're broken. Why can't you be this? Why can't you do that? Why are you so bad at this? Why are you so good at this but bad at this? All of these different things happen to us. And it leads us to have a really tough time and a lot of fear around communicating with people. And so we isolate. If I don't talk to anybody, I don't get hurt. If I don't talk to anybody, I don't hurt people.
Yeah.
Right. And that causes us to really lose the muscles for communication. We don't communicate because we let it atrophy.
Because we've had all these negative experiences around it.
You look at the statistics out there, by the age of 12, most neurodivergent children have had 20,000 more negative criticisms laid against them than their neurotypical counterparts.
I didn't even know that figure. That's really depressing.
Yeah, it's based on a research, and I can't remember, but it was done back in 2005 and corroborated in 2010, 2011. And Dr. Bill Dotson talks about it a lot. And the thing is that negative impact on our lives during the neurodevelopmental stages from 0 to 12 causes us to essentially form these very negative viewpoints because we don't have that natural introspection that neurotypical people have. And especially if it's autism is involved, there's definitely a lack of a natural introspection. And so we form the core belief and understanding and self-assessment of what those people around us tell us from the external sources. And if it's based around a lot of negativity, then we build a negative viewpoint of ourselves where we don't want to be a burden on those people around us. We don't want to be frustrating to deal with.
And the impact that has on relationships is massive, right?
Because we never feel like we're worthy of good relationships. And so we'll settle for bad relationships.
Yeah, and have you heard of the shame spiral with ADHD as well? That's the place I always go to a lot of the time. And it's so hard once you're in it to get yourself back out.
Absolutely. And why should you get out of it? Because you were taught that you should be ashamed. And so a lot of the work that I do is essentially taking people back and really rebuilding a concept of who they are based on a much more objective standpoint. Now, I don't solve those problems for people. That's what therapists are for. But what I do is I give them a practical tool, right? And it's a freebie that I have on my website. If you go to creatingorderfromchaos.com, that it allows you to really start to develop a better understanding of who you are. And that is the key right there, is gaining a better understanding of who you actually are. That's how you counter the emotional dysregulation and the shame and imposter syndrome and the rejection sensitivity issues. And that's how you start to build a better relationship with yourself. And once you start building a better relationship with yourself, you can start building better relationships with other people. Right? You can't love other people until you love yourself.
And this is a common thing. Yeah, exactly. And this is a common thing that comes up in my podcast time and time again, but it's always about having that self-awareness. When you start your journey of ADHD, it's not just, or any kind of neurodivergent condition, it's about learning how to do things in your way and building yourself back up. And like you were saying, deconstructing what society has said about you in a negative content and kind of reconstructing it into who am I away from all that. And I just think that's so powerful about what you said, because so many people don't get that, because like you said, the symptoms of ADHD, it makes it sound like it's a very two-dimensional condition, right? But it's three-dimensional. It's so much more complex than a bunch of bullet points listing the characteristics.
Technically speaking, if you add the time factor into its fourth dimensions, because time is an issue for us.
The time. I love it.
But and man, when you stack on all of that, but then look at hyper focus and hyper fixations.
Oh, wow.
Right? We get into a new project, or we're playing a new game, or we get so locked in, or we're dating a new girl or guy, right? We get so locked into those things that our friends sometimes are like, hey, it's been like 6 months since I last talked to you. Like, what's happened? And I'm like, it's 3 days ago for me. Yeah, it was 3 days ago for me. I don't know what to tell you. It's only been 3 days since we last talked. And no, it's definitely been 6 months, because it looked like the last time you IM'd me.
Oh, it's
and
crazy.
I'm like, or DM for the new kids. But you have to understand those things about yourself. This is why psychoeducation with a therapist or with a coach or through support groups is so valuable. In getting that objective understanding, because you're still going to have a very hard time being self-reflective and introspective. You're still likely going to need a lot more support until you get to a place where you understand how to do that in a much more externalized way that works for your brain.
And I think it's so good that you're doing like a support group for men with ADHD and neurodivergency as well, because I think for men, it's a bit of a different ball game, because obviously, like you were saying, they have there's the stoic impression of what a man should be. And when it comes to struggling, it hits in a different way, doesn't it, to what a woman goes through with ADHD or any kind of neurodivergent condition.
Yeah, men aren't allowed to be weak. Anytime a man shows any kind of weakness or anything like that, there is a proclivity, not just for other men, but for society in general, to treat that person like they're a failure. And we're deathly afraid of failure. Right?
100%.
And then you stack on top of that ADHD, fear of failure, and like the emotional dysregulation, right? We aren't allowed to be emotional. We're not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to have externalized feelings. The smiles need to be, like hilarity and stuff like that. And there's this animal that really is in our society that really comes at us so hard. And if we fail in any aspect of manhood, we can get mauled by it. And that causes a lot of issues for men on top of the issues that they already deal with. And here's the thing, I want to make sure I reiterate this. It is not that women do not suffer with, similarly.
It's
right?
different. It's different.
Right. It's different. There's different ways that they present. It's also different ways that society looks at women. And it's just as bad in many cases.
Yeah.
But so much of the issues of why I work with men in the men's ADHD support group is because there's nothing else out there like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are no men's ADHD support groups in a lot of these support groups. Chad doesn't even have one. We actually work with Chad to give them one. ADA has a men's ADHD support group, and ACO has a men's support group, but insular and they're behind paywalls. And we don't want to do paywalls with this stuff. In fact, we actually just had a conversation a few weeks ago about this, and they were like, why don't you charge for membership for your thing? And we're like, because men aren't going to pay for that shit. But at the same time, we also do provide men like coaching and stuff like that for different rates. But we also do just a metric ton of psychoeducation on our website and in the Facebook group. And that's one of those things that I really find a lot of value in. And it helps me be a better person, helps me be a better coach. It helps me be a better business manager for those who are looking to try to create businesses. And it just gives me a lot of different frameworks to work with to be able to help different people. Because, cookie cutter solutions for ADHD and autism, there's not. Like a lot of people out there are like, oh, the 10 steps to cure ADHD.
Right.
Yeah, F off,
One way to cure ADHD.
Take your psilocybin somewhere else. But no. But it's just really important to understand that whenever you're working with people with ADHD, or you're working with your friends or your children with ADHD, each one of them is going to have this spectrum of symptoms. And so each one of those issues are going to require specific treatments and care and understanding and boundaries.
When you look at all what we've been talking about in terms of the emotional dysregulation, the fact that men struggle with sharing feelings in any way, and then obviously, like you said, everyone's an individual. How do we even maintain relationships as people with ADHD? It's so complex.
Wow, that was like a deep dive into not just how us ADHDers struggle to form relationships, but also went a long way to explaining why we are the way we are. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget that the discussion isn't over just yet. In next week's episode, we'll be talking more specifically around friendship, why we're taken advantage of so often, and also how we can maintain healthy boundaries without pushing people away. Hopefully, we'll catch you then. Take care, everyone.